me, Katie-Beth again. And welcome back to Handcraft, HandSewn Humpdays. That's Wednesday if you were wondering. It's the part of the week where we do different crafts or sewing videos. And continuing on with my Halloween-themed Oktoberfest dresses, today I have a really exciting one to show you. It's a one-day make, so I did make it all within 24 hours. And I also made a matching mask to go with it. I'm pretty excited. I'm going to get changed into it right now, and while I'm doing that, feel free to watch the video of how I made it and some of the different trials I had to go through. It was a new fabric that I had never used before, so that was interesting. So I'm going to go get changed, and please watch this video. Well, I was at Joann's Fabric last week. I found this beautiful spider, pretty, not quite lacy. It's a chiffon type of fabric. I really love it, but it's really slippery, so it's going to be a challenge for me. I'm just cutting the skirt now, and I'm doing about 2.5 feet to cover my legs. I did find out that there is a definite front and back of the fabric, and I've chosen the really fuzzy part of the spider to be the front. So what you're looking at right now in the fabric are the little holes from when the fabric is made and they take it off of the loom and it has little holes in it. I didn't think about that when sewing my two seams together, so now I get to pull those together again and sew a new seam to cover up those little holes so the back of my dress doesn't have little holes in it. I also used this opportunity while I was sewing the new work I had made for myself to change to a black thread because I felt like black was blending in with this better than the gray. Gray just seemed a little too light for this project. And because I didn't use a pattern for this skirt, I had to even it out a little because I had just cut pieces, so I'm just trimming off the excess to make the pieces of fabric the same size. Next, I jump into ironing the hem of the dress, and this was very frightening for me because lately I've been melting fabric. So I started with the lowest possible temperature on there and then turned it up until I got to a wool setting, and then that seemed to iron it pretty well, so I stuck with the wool setting. Traditionally, Oktoberfest dresses are very low cut, and you wear a blouse to kind of help cover the cleavage area. But I didn't want to have to wear a blouse with this dress, so I decided to make the dress come up about a little over an inch higher. So I took some wax paper. It's really the only thing wax paper is good for, since if you put it in the oven, it smokes. And I traced myself a new pattern with a higher cleavage line. After I had my new pattern pieces cut out, I matched them up to each other to make sure they would line up once I started sewing. And they kind of did and kind of didn't. So I pinned them together so I would see what it would look like if I sewed them together. And from there, I trimmed off the excess of what I wouldn't need. Then I made sure to label my new pattern pieces as tall, so that if I use these in the future, I'll know that this is a taller bust and not a low bust, still keeping my low bust pieces. I might need that in the future, but just in case I come back to these two pieces, I'll know that they're the taller bust pieces. Next, I moved on to actually cutting my vest pieces out. Now, however, with this, because the fabric is so sheer, I also had to cut out a backing for all of these pieces other than the lining, just so it wouldn't have a sheer see-through piece. And I did this with all of the pieces. I backed them in black, and then I tacked the sheer and the black piece together so that they would now be one piece, and I could sew with them as one piece. Now I want to share with you a piece of trouble I ran into. So because the spider has so many threads making up all of his hair, my machine just got stuck in that, the thread of my own machine. And it kind of ripped a little hole in it. Luckily, it was on the edge and not too hard to fix or cover up. But I'm going to need to watch out for this in the future. And here's another little unforeseen issue I ran into. Somehow I sewed a crumb in between the see-through fabric and the solid fabric, so I had to rip the seam and get that crumb out. And let me share with you my next struggle, which was ironing the seams open. The main struggle on this was that the two different fabrics on here required two different temperatures of heat, but I kind of split the difference and went a little higher than the wool setting and a little lighter than the cotton setting, and it seemed to work out pretty well. Next, I sewed together and ironed the lining, and the lining I just used the same type of black cotton that I used for the underside of the chiffon. Next, I pinned together the two fabrics, so the lining and the chiffon/cotton fabric, and the chiffon's on the inside here, so the front sides are being sewn in the middle, and then I flipped them around, and now I'm shoving the skirt in between the two pieces of fabric. So if I flip it around the other side, this is the pretty chiffon side, and I'm just shoving the skirt up into that. But it's hard to get them matched both on the front side and the back side. I keep having pieces falling out. So before I put this under the needle, I need to make sure that the back side and the front side are pretty much the same with the skirt shoved up in there and secure. And it seems to be pretty good, so now I put it into the machine. And I am sewing with the pretty front side facing towards me. So, because that's the more important side, if something messes up, I'd rather it mess up on the inside where you can't see it. So I work sewing the skirt inside the two pieces of fabric, but I keep flipping over to the other side because I'm getting scared that the black is going to roll up and it's going to look really bad inside. And this could be a little bit of self-prophecy, but I did manage to get it tangled up in there. I noticed that it was getting thicker, the section that I was sewing, and that's because I somehow pulled up part of the skirt, a larger part of the leg part, up in there where I was sewing, which I don't want. So I'm having to pick it out, which is becoming increasingly hard since I use such cute little stitches to do this, which are perfect as long as I don't have to try to pick them apart. Okay, so speeding into the future, I did manage to get the skirt pulled out enough that it's not horrible looking, and I'm going to try to keep the lining down enough that I can sew it nicely. But of course, I ran out of bobbin thread. So here's a little clip of me making new bobbin thread. And back to sewing I go. But now every few seconds, I'm flipping it over to check the underside to make sure I'm not sewing anything that I don't want under there, and to make sure that the lining's staying down properly. And now I finished sewing through the waistband, and I'm okay with this. And I flip it over to the other side to see the pretty side, and I'm reasonably okay with this also. However, when I get towards the end, there is a section that didn't quite get sewn up in there. Although the other side looks great, so I hate to have to tear it up, but you gotta do what you gotta do. So now I'm going to pick the seam out. And then as soon as the hole's big enough, I'm going to shove the skirt back up in there and sew back over it. From this point, now I worry about putting the zipper in. So zippers for me, I don't do them the official way because I've had bad experiences with that. One bad experience, actually. So I just pin the zipper in to where I want it. And then I check the zipper by zipping it and unzipping it a bunch of times. And right now I found a problem already. It's getting stuck on the fabric. So I just take the pins out and repin it until it doesn't. So here's my final zipper trial. Before I put it under the needle, it's zipping and unzipping just fine. And so this is how I put zippers in. I unzip it, and then just start sewing it in place. And here is my almost finished product. The zipper works perfectly, it zips and unzips just fine. The only issue I'm having with it now is that the fabric's a little uneven on the top, so I'm going to take a needle and thread and pin some of that extra chiffon down so it matches up better. And now the final review. Was a big reveal of my new lovely dress and a matching mask. I am actually a really big fan of this mask. It was really hard to get the spider even somewhat matched up on the front, but I'm going to try and make a few more and maybe put them on my Etsy account this week. If you're interested, I'll put my Etsy account link in the description below. I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in this week. It really means a lot to me. If you're already subscribed, thank you so much. And if you're new here and might want to visit again, go ahead and hit that subscribe button below. On Wednesdays, we do crafting or sewing videos. And even I was surprised this week that when you put some chiffon on a normal Oktoberfest dress, it makes it so freaking fancy. I really enjoyed this make. I also really enjoyed that it only took 24 hours to make. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you next week, and have a great night.